Okay, this is what the request for disbursement form looks like. I'm just going over the fields, name of the grantee or contractor. That will be you all, your organization's name, grant agreement number, your project manager. By the time you get to this point, you'll have all of this information, in your project manager can help remind you if you forget. Grant agreement number, invoice number. For us, when you're invoicing us, usually your first invoice to us, you'll label as one, but I also know that some organizations have their own internal invoice number. So if you want to add that internal number in parentheses for your tracking, you can go ahead and do that. The address that you want the check sent to. So as part of this process, and I think Fanny went over this, we will ask for a STD 204 form, which is a payee data form. The address that is provided on the form is what we use to confirm the address on your requested for disbursement form. So wherever you want your check to be sent to, that should be the address on your payee data form and on your request for disbursement forms. If for some reason that changes, you need to let your project manager know, submit a new payee data form, and then you can use that new billing address. Project name, and then billing period covered. So you'll put month and date to month and date that you have incurred expenses, and that will be the same for your progress report. That's the progress report would be for that same time period. And as you can see here, under work plan task number and name, this is just your budget, your task-based budget that you'll fill in to each of those slots. What you've budgeted is in that yellow column, and then costs incurred this period is, again, the cost you incurred the billing period, and then the next column is the cumulative to date. And this sheet, if you use the Excel spreadsheet, it'll calculate the remaining balance for you. So yeah, I think that I've seen grantees use the Excel spreadsheet to calculate that remaining balance and then submit a PDF to us, or you can save and print and submit as a PDF. I'm not as familiar with the slides. Could I see what's on the next slide real quick? I think it might break down some of it. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, there. I think we went over this, most of this already. I think the last portion is that at the bottom it says less 5 to 10% withhold. As we're doing the project, we withhold a small amount of the disbursement, and at the end of the project, when everything has been completed, we release that withhold amount. So please talk to your project manager about these amounts. It'll be written into your grant agreement. And again, if you are a small agency and have very small cash flow, talk to your project manager, because I think there can be other options for you. So only at the end of the project do we release the withholding. So when that's time, you will check the final invoice box, and then if you're keeping track of withhold, you can put a number there. If not, your project manager will know what the withhold amount was for the grant agreement and can tell you what number to put there to release. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the second page of the request for disbursement, and the slide breaks down the list of expenses. So category A is usually your direct expenses, so any materials and equipment that you've purchased, and that should be accompanied by a receipt or an invoice. And then this comes back to Erica Weber's question. Section B is labor, and this is only for people on your payroll for your agency or your community organization. So you would put the person's job title and the number of hours worked, And then in the second column, you would put what their hourly rate is. And then from that, calculate the total amount that needs to be dispersed to pay them for their time. For anyone that's charging indirect, so the cost must match the program. So for example, if you're charging 20% indirect, then you would put the percentage here and take 20% of the labor and put that amount in the subtotal there. Oh, sorry, put that amount next to on the same line as C, number C there.
Sorry, Erica, can I correct you really quickly about the indirect cost? So it's not 20% of the labor, but it's 20% of, so 20% is the budgeted amount, right? For the out of the total grant amount. So that section here, the way because it's C, it's actually its own section. So whatever during that billing period that you have, that you're billing for, whatever indirect costs that you want to bill for during that billing period, you put that in that section, and it needs to match what you have on the first page.
Oh yes, thank you, Fanny. I apologize. I think that some groups also charge an indirect cost for subcontracts as well, and things like that. So yeah, yes, your entire indirect needs to go into this line item. However it is that your CBO or your fiscal sponsor charges indirect. So that's a standalone item. Thank you for that. And then next slide, I think it's maybe going to go over subcontract. Oh no, sorry. Could you go back one slide? Okay, and then I'm going to go over D, which is subcontractor expenditures. So if you have a another entity that you're contracting out to do the work, usually they will provide you an invoice, and this is where you list who the subcontractor is, their invoice number, and the amount that they are invoicing for. If you are juggling multiple grants and you're only using Coastal Conservancy to pay part of an invoice, and I'm going to ask my teammates to correct me here if I'm wrong. What you would do is put the amount here that you want us to pay from that invoice. And then on the invoice itself, we like to put a note in red that, Coastal Conservancy is paying partial and that amount. I think it really helps our contracts folks out there.
Yeah, that would be on the backup document, right? So sometimes they like to put out the subcontractor costs. There's their total, and then let's say, oh, I want 15% of that to be billed to the SCC grant, and then they would put in the amount. I've also had grantees where they break it out in the RFD. You should work with your project manager on that if you need to keep everything clean and nice on one RFD.
Great. And then that grand total at the bottom should also match the grand total, the total at the top of the RFD one, because you're reporting the same expenses just in a different format. Next slide.